Hi, everybody. Welcome to the DC Wrap interview series. I'm Pat Pobletti with WisPolitics.com. And joining me today is U.S. Rep. Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin's 8th Congressional District. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Now, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, of course, but particularly timely today after U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo formally certified to Congress that the Trump administration is no longer viewing Hong Kong as an autonomous region of China. Now, one of the many hats that you wear as a member of Congress is a member of a new congressional task force on China. So what do you make of these latest developments?
Well, I think it was the right call by Secretary Pompeo, and it is unfortunate that the Chinese Communist Party has taken this very aggressive step. And the fact is there can be no autonomy or a separate system for Hong Kong, certainly not one that respects the basic inalienable rights of the Hong Kongers when you have the Chinese Communist Party dictating things, when you have a chief executive in Carrie Lam that's effectively a lapdog of the Chinese Communist Party, and when you have, which I'm sure will happen shortly, a massive infusion of police and security personnel on the ground. So this is incredibly worrying, not only from the perspective of wanting to support the people of Hong Kong in their quest for basic dignity and human rights, but also for the precedent this sets globally, potentially the implications it has for Taiwan, which is certainly Xi's number one target in terms of what he wants to achieve and what he wants his legacy issue to be in his time as General Secretary. And so I applaud Secretary Pompeo for making this determination, which I know is not easy, but it's incumbent upon all of us in the United States and our allies in the free world to stand strongly with the people of Hong Kong and stand up to the Chinese Communist Party.
Now, shifting gears real quick, the House is back in session today, and with that comes the first opportunity for lawmakers to play the proxy voting process that was approved largely along party lines a couple weeks ago. Now, you penned an editorial last week voicing your opposition to this move. Can you maybe expand on the problems you see for it, for those of us who didn't get a chance to read that editorial?
Well, first of all, who hasn't read the op-ed at this point? I mean, that thing went viral. So it's strange credulity to believe there's someone out there who hasn't read it. But on a serious note, listen, it is as close to something sacred we have in the secular world, this relationship between an elected representative and your constituents, right? I have 730,000 people in Northeast Wisconsin that have put their trust in me to vote with their interest in mind. And the idea that elected representatives would surrender that vote and by extension, surrender that trust of their constituents to the Speaker of the House is crazy. And it is perhaps unconstitutional. We'll see when this lawsuit gets adjudicated and probably will go all the way up to the Supreme Court. But at best, it's aconstitutional and irresponsible. And the fact is, I'm here in my office. We're here in DC. We've taken very sensible precautionary measures. We are voting in groups so that we don't crowd on the floor. We're wearing masks when we go to the House floor. We're using, a ton of hand sanitizer. We're not opening the Capitol up to thousands of visitors from around the country. We can do our work here in DC responsibly. And I think we have a responsibility to get back to work at a time when so many Americans are struggling. And this is actually embarrassing for the Speaker of the House to allow proxy voting to go forward. And it is a further diminution of the role of the legislature, which I hope we will reverse immediately.
Now, to switch gears one more time, a cyberspace panel that you lead, the Cyberspace Solarium Commission, participated in the first completely virtual hearing in the history of Congress a couple weeks back. How did that hearing go, and kind of where do you see the commission's recommendations developing as we get closer to November?
I think it went very well. It was an interesting Wisconsin experience. I was testifying before a committee that Senator Ron Johnson chairs. And so we had a great discussion. We had a healthy debate on a variety of cyber issues. The report we released in March, which you can download for free on solarium.gov, that's solarium.gov, was the culmination of over a year of work. I co-chaired the commission with an independent senator from Maine named Angus King, And it's not partisan at all. It's bipartisan. It's, cyber, defense and cybersecurity are issues that don't break neatly along Republican or Democratic lines. And so I personally believe, and I know that Senator King agrees, that what we've experienced in the coronavirus pandemic should only add a sense of urgency to our efforts to secure ourselves in cyber, because the fact is right now we know the Chinese Communist Party is trying to attack us in cyberspace and exploit confusion created by the pandemic. We know there are a variety of other malicious actors in cyberspace, and we know that our current system of government is just not well postured to deter our adversaries and protect our interests in cyber. And so we wrote this report in an effort to prevent a massive cyber attack on America from happening. And I hope that people will read it. I hope Wisconsinites will engage in the debate, because what's different about today's competition in cyber compared with our competition in the early Cold War is that every single American is on the front lines. And you don't need to be a nation state to have access to some of the most destructive weapons in cyber. You can just be a very ambitious cyber criminal or hacker. And so this is something we all need to wake up, lest we find ourselves responding a few years from now to the wake or the devastation caused by a massive cyber attack.
And lastly, just wanted to open the floor up to you. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you're working on, do you want to highlight?
Well, I think all of us are concerned with how do we responsibly reopen in Wisconsin. And I know there's been a lot of attention paid to people bar hopping and things like this. But what I've seen in my neck of the woods in Northeast Wisconsin, there are a lot of people that are trying to do the right thing, that want to get back to work. Businesses want to open up, but they're still going to protect their employees. And I think that's positive. The hospitals are increasingly confident about their ability to weather any periodic brush fires or surges we might see at a local level. So that's important. But at a broader level, I just would say that this crisis should tell us all a lot about the nature of the regime that we face in Beijing. And I believe we are in the early stages of a new Cold War. This is going to be the struggle for our generation. And it's not just a matter of obscure foreign policy issues. It's a matter of our day-to-day economy, because we're going to have to find a way to decouple parts of our economy from China and bring a lot of that manufacturing, which we are dangerously dependent on China for, back to the United States. And so that is a critical issue that we can't take our eye off that ball with.
All right, Congressman Mike Gallagher, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And for more Washington, D.C. based content, check out wispolitics.com and the DC Wrap product. See you guys all next week.